Now, this is one many of you have been requesting ever since Shout Factory announced it earlier this year, and that is the Blob on 4K UHD. And I really wanted to get this out a lot sooner than I have, but I already had a handful of other comparisons that I was finishing up and needed to get those out first. But we're finally here with the low-budget classic 1988 remake of The Blob, helmed by director Charles Russell, who just prior to this also directed Nightmare on Elm Street 3: The Dream Warriors. And I think it's safe to say we're all in agreement. Number 3 is definitely the best sequel out of the entire Nightmare series. Russell also later on went to direct The Mask in '94 of Jim Carrey, so he's no stranger to outrageous special effects, and he goes all in with The Blob, with some incredible practical effect gags by Yoy Heatman that to this day I'm still surprised how great these effects hold up. Now, The Blob was written by Charles Russell, but it was also co-written by his friend Frank Darabont, who went on to write and direct The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, and The Mist, and he also brought the Walking Dead comics to life with the Walking Dead TV series. And the movie is just chock full of character actors. There is some major A-list talent behind and in front of the camera. And in 2019, Shout Factory released The Blob on Blu-ray. Now, prior to this, the only Blu-ray here in the States was a very lackluster Twilight Time release, which only had an HD transfer, not even a new restoration from the camera negative or a 2K scan. And Shout Factory just reissued the exact same HD transfer for their Blu-ray that Twilight Time used. Now, just 4 years later, Shout Factory has finally righted the wrong and given us fans what we crave, and that is to see all the grotesque, bloody mayhem in 2160p resolution glory from a new 2023 4K restoration from the original camera negative, forming a native 4K DI with the added benefits of HDR10 and Dolby Vision grading, along with the theatrically correct ratio of 1:85:1 when the previous Blu-ray was framed wrong at 1:78:1, which may not seem like it's a huge difference, but trust me, there's a big difference there. Alright, so let's get into it and let's find out if this 4K UHD is worth upgrading from your previous Blu-ray. The Blob on 4K UHD is a powerhouse that just swallows up the competition with all previous Blu-ray releases in every way. Right from the opening titles, you know what you're in for. The 4K offers a fresher, crisper image with a beautiful cleanup job, where they only cleaned up wear caused from the negative sitting in storage for a number of years. Now, the previous Twilight and Shout Factory Blu-rays had coloring problems with dull colors. I also noticed some unstable color shifting, especially with the Blob itself, that just never really looked right, and it definitely didn't look like how I remembered seeing it. Now, with the help from the HDR10 and Dolby Vision grading, opening up the color gamut wider, only enhancing what's already there with no color manipulation. The Blob was always meant to change colors through the film as it eats and grows from reds, pinks, and purple tones. Again, we didn't really get this on the Blu-ray. What this 4K has done has brought back the original color design of the Blob that looks much more appropriate now and retaining the intended color changes accurately, looking exactly how I remembered seeing it back in the day. Primary colors, especially with reds from the football uniforms, traffic signs, street lights, even cars, look much healthier now and active with vibrant candy reds, but it's really the blood and gore factor that's a standout here on this 4K, having truer crimson reds that looks much more stable and active now. Blues are likewise more pleasing to look at now, with natural cooler blues that aren't blown out as they are on a Blu-ray. Yellows and greens are also fuller and lush. Skin tones are warmer to look at, looking more natural, unlike the Blu-ray that suffered from pale skin tones. And we also have lots of warm secondary hues. Now, saturation is increased, but slightly. And what this does is it helps to create a healthier, more lifelike and stable appearance without the saturation looking artificially boosted or too hot. It's dialed in just right. I will say though that contrast does lead to the image being very slightly darker than the previous Blu-ray. However, it's for a very good reason. Number one, allowing us to see much more detail and clarity. In some shots, the blob has this translucent look, allowing light to be seen through, along with all the grotesque remains of people being digested. And now it's clearly visible, unlike the Blu-ray where it was a little obscured. Well, the blob, for the majority of the movie, was shot at night or under dark scenes. The reason behind this was mainly to hide all those nasty matte lines and other things that were needed to deploy all the practical blob effects. And the problem in this area with the Blu-ray is that it had poor black levels, with even some slight grayish blacks, where you can easily make out the matte lines that were meant to be hidden. This is mainly when the blob makes its rampage through the town near the end of the film. Now, thankfully, the 4K handles all this much better now. The deeper blacks and richer shadows do two things. One, it gives these night scenes a more authentic night look. But number two, and even more important, is that the deeper blacks and shadows now hides the matte lines, where these effects shots blend in much better now, as they were intended to be. The deeper blacks and shadows also helps in drawing out more information in the image with clearer visible details and colors that were otherwise missing on the Blu-ray, even in the darkest corners of the frame. So it all looks just much more appealing now. The Blu-ray was also a hot mess when it came to inconsistency and clarity, especially with the effects and details, with varying degrees of sharpness, where 1 minute the image will look nice and sharp, then the very next moment the image looks very soft and flat, or even some slight blurriness to it. And that's just one problem out of a handful with the Blu-ray. The 4K now has fantastic detail and textures that are sharp, with the added lines from the higher resolution that stays consistently sharp throughout the film. The production design is all there, showcasing the incredible and horrific special effects, where it feels more fluid with the rest of the movie and doesn't stick out like a sore thumb as much as it did on the Blu-ray. I also have to point out there is more depth and three-dimensionality on this 4K. You really have a much truer sense of the scale to the image, showing the gigantic blob against the townspeople rampaging through the town. The bit rate starts out around 64 and tops out around 98 Mbps, and the grain field is very nicely resolved here with a nice thin layer of natural 35mm grain, where on the Blu-ray there was some grain management done with it, with the DNR scrubbing making the image look very soft and flat and waxy at times. Now we have a nice filmic appearance of natural 35mm grain field. Alright, now let's get into the audio presentation of this 4K, and unfortunately we don't have an upgrade with the audio. We have the same DTS stereo and DTS 5.1 tracks. Now the 5.1 track was sourced from the original 4-track theatrical audio, and it still gets the job done. Alright, so my score for Shout Factory's 4K UHD presentation of the Blob, I'm giving the video a 5 out of a 5. This is a night and day difference between the previous Blu-ray, and definitely worth upgrading from your Blu-ray. As for the audio, I'm going to knock it down a peg to a 4 out of a 5. Well, here's the real test. I want to hear from you. Head over to the comment section and let me know, when you look at the differences here between the 4K and the previous Blu-ray, which do you like better? Head over to the comment section and let me know. Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for hanging out for a few minutes here with me, talking about the Blob and comparing it to the previous Blu-ray. Let's get rid of that thing. As always, guys, keep physical media alive, and we'll see you next time.